My name's Kevin. I've actually been working with Epicor for about a year and a half now. I have previous experience as a IT consultant where I would help small to medium organizations with various different database systems, and I have brought that leverage and experience to bear with transitioning into helping Stepis transition into from Epicor Classic to Epicor Kinetic. Stepis itself is a contract manufacturing business with its headquarters in Dickinson, North Dakota. Today, I will be demonstrating how to use calculated fields and advanced group by to rotate multiple columns with a pivot table. To do that, first off, I will show what the end results look like. Specifically here, the data about company, plant, and to plant are obscured in this BAQ. That is for privacy purposes. This can be done without, of course, encrypting any of those fields. So in this particular instance, we wanted to build a dashboard and BAQ that is showing how many times we are using the transfer order shipments between sites in our company, and we wanted to get some summary information from that as well. At the top line here, this line actually summarizes our grand total of transfer shipments across all companies. We're able to split that out and show to plant, specific companies, specific plants, and specific combination of from certain plants to certain plants. Also, we are able to do this over a period of 52 weeks, going from week 0 all the way back to our 52-week mark and beyond. We're specifically showing all transactions, and we're actually telling all the transactions in our database. That is, we're able to summarize also our totals in the fields, these set of fields here that are a precursor with grand total over 27,000 records, and we are able to perform this calculation in just under 8 seconds, or just over 8 seconds. I have actually seen this BAQ execute in as little as 2.5 seconds. It just kind of depends on how much the BAQ is loaded down. We'll go ahead and start. I'm going to go ahead and stop the webcam now. That way we have more screen availability for the presentation. The first thing we're going to want to go ahead and do is create a new BAQ. We're going to call it, I have a habit of actually using minus signs. Don't do that. It creates some additional issues if you use the minus instead of the underscore, especially in subqueries. And then the first thing we want to go ahead and do is rename our top level database or query, because it'll help us identify it later. And then we're going to bring in 3 tables here: TF ship, which is the TF ship head, TF ship detail, and then we're going to put in our part. From here, we basically have our 3 tables that we're going to need to perform our calculations. We'll go ahead and come over to our database, and the details that we're going to want to work on today are basically going to be our company, our plant, and our to plant data. Normally, we would just pull that through one of these tables, but since we want to obscure ours in this particular instance, I am going to use calculated fields. We'll call this one company, and this is going to be and var, and we're going to hash these results. So 128-bit to give us enough space in there, and we'll convert. This is a MD2 type hash, and then we'll grab our TF, and then we want to check our syntax, make sure we didn't.
I think you have the size wrong. I think I went 238, not 128.
Thank you.
Nope, still need a 2.
Oh, not enough parentheses. Syntax is okay. And we're going to save ourselves some time. We're going to go ahead and copy that. And new. This will be plant again in var 128. And then we'll want the T, and we'll copy. And this one is to plant. Again, same data type. Everything's looking good. We'll save that. We want one more field here, which is going to be our week. This is going to be an integer type data array. One thing to keep in mind while you are building the data set that you're going to pivot multiple columns on is that they will all need to be the same data type because there is only one calculation performed on each data type on all your data. All of our data in this particular instance is going to be an integer type because we are counting how many shipments. If you need decimals, etc., obviously we'll have to use different data type. Here, we want to calculate out the week. We will do a case statement, and we're going to check when that date is. So we'll use date div, type of week. We want constants today, and then we're going to go tf ship head ship date, and then we're going to go minus. If it's less than 52, meaning that it's more than 52 weeks ago, then we're going to just set it as minus 53. And then we'll go ahead and copy this statement, go else, same statement, and then we can go ahead and we'll check the syntax. I forgot my time. Check syntax. Put the then in the right place, Kevin. Somebody sitting over your shoulder always, or somebody sitting over my shoulder always makes me a little bit more nervous. So if I make some silly mistakes, that's usually why. Check syntax.
That's okay, Kevin. For that. We'll point it out to you.
Right. All right. So just check my syntax. We're good there. And now we're going to go ahead and save this. We will be coming back into the calculated fields in a moment because we need to build our data set. But the first thing we want to go ahead and do is come in and group by each of these values. And then that'll help us when we're doing our calculated fields in a moment. Now we could obviously come over here, go analyze, and then test our results. And we are pulling in pretty much the data we expect at this point in time. 655 rows showing all of our various shipping transactions. When we come back, then we'll do additional calculated fields. Here we're going to want an M quantity. All of our, it's going to be an integer. All of our data type, all of our parts actually have a part class or class IDs have a prefix on them. We have M for manufactured, F for finished goods, and P for purchase parts. So we're going to break out each of those. To do so, we will count and we'll nest a case statement inside of our count class ID, like, and we want to grab that M prefix. So M percent and TF ship head. We're checking to see whether or not this has been shipped, because in this particular instance, we only want to know the exact numbers that have been shipped. Then part class ID and We'll go ahead and make that just a little bit longer. We can check our syntax. Everything looks good. We'll go ahead and save ourselves some time. We'll copy that because our next calculation is going to be pretty much identical. This will be F quantity and data type integer. And the only thing we need to change here is our F. And our third one is going to be P quantity int and P type. Now, we also want to identify our opened, our closed, and our shipped as far as their current status. So we will call this one open int, and in here we'll do another nested case statement. So count case when TF ship head ship status equals open TF ship head dot ship status and okay, we'll go ahead and also check our syntax, make sure we typed everything correctly, copy that, and build our next one. This one is going to be for closed int, and just change this to closed. Next will be our shipped, also int, and then status is going to be shipped. One more, and that will be our total quantity and int, and this one is just count TF ship head dot ship status, and check our syntax, save. I do recommend saving like every time you go and verify that it is functioning as intended. And we can see that at the moment this is functioning as intended. We are getting results for all of our current counts, and they appear to be accurate. As a by the by, this particular dashboard has not been validated for accuracy at this point in time, but it does work as a valid demonstration of the concept of doing a multi-pivot here. So we're going to go ahead and come back here, make sure we save. We want to change our subquery to an inner subquery, and we will create a new top level. This one we're going to call unpivot, because that is essentially what we're going to do with calculated and group by. So we will now come back to our phase build and add our TF ship count to our database. We want to, from this point, go into our display fields and into our advanced group by settings and build a grouping set. In this grouping set, we are going to start out with our database fields. We want to add we're going to add our company and our plant and our food plant, and then we're going to add our week, add the last comma, and we're going to actually copy this statement so that we don't have to repeat. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We'll do 8 for good measure. Now we want to add our in quantity. Now, one of the reasons I'm doing this the way I am is because I find it quite simple in this particular process here. You'll notice that the cursor actually stays in the bottom despite the fact that I just pasted that from the available tables. I can now use the down and left arrow key to get to my next, and I don't have to move my cursor around that much. I find that oftentimes this is a huge time saver. We'll do the same. Shipped, and then we need total. And looks like I had added 2 I don't need. And then we can, you realize that I did not actually create a new expression. Copy that, add a row, and then paste those results. Now we can tell that okay, and we will want to go and test our results to see whether or not display fields, company to plant, to part, and we will not be displaying week here because we are going to be pivoting on all of this, on all of these pieces of data and creating a calculated field that will be our new column name. If we try to include week in this particular week field directly in our display columns, it will not group our data in our results. So we want to make sure to not actually include the calculated week here. So we can now analyze and check, and this is basically to verify that our syntax is working correctly. Now we will note that we went from 655 rows to 4,585 rows. That is expected at this stage. We'll go ahead and come back to our calculated fields. And the reason why we would expect that the reason we're expecting that number to increase is because our group by has multiple grouping sets, which is actually splitting the columns out to where each line in our data for our unpivot table has one value, which is each one of these M quantity, F quantity, P quantity, open, closed, ship, total for each of our original 655 records. So we will now need to create a label. This is going to be a string. We will make this at least 25 characters long. You can basically update this to be anything. We specifically want to do a case here. We're giving this a prefix of our numerical value. Basically, what week are we in? Or are we trying to currently summarize our data? So when tf ship count is right, this is actually going to come back later, but we're checking to see whether or not our week is null. In our result set at the moment, there is nothing null, but this is going to help us later get our summary data. Then we'll take the same. Actually, we can grab this when it's less than -52. Remember, we actually had set everything that was less than 52 at -53. We could honestly have skipped that, but it does help to shrink our data set from our original query so that we're not trying to do all of that unpivoting here, but it all kind of depends on what you're looking for, where you're looking to do whatever it is, whatever transactions you're trying to, or whatever calculations you're trying to perform. So in this particular instance, when this is less than -52, we have one column that's going to be -53, we're going to call that greater than 52. Basically, it's more than 52 weeks ago. And then we're adding a space here specifically for formatting our data so it's easier to read. Else we will cast our t at ship count calculated week as in our chart and 25 plus, and then we're going to add that space here as well. TF ship count calculated, and again having some troubles typing today. So we need to convert this integer type into an invarchar, specifically, so that otherwise this will generally generate an error as trying to put an integer into a string if we don't explicitly define a conversion, which our cast will convert for us. We will, in this case, and pair it with our next set of data, which is actually going to be what we use to distinguish between our data types. In this particular case, we'll go ahead and do case when grouping, and we're going to save ourselves some time by leaving that grouping set undefined at the moment, not equals to 1, then quantity. Now we will grab that as is. Come on, fingers work. Now we'll go in here. We're going to add our data. Let me pull this out real quick. Our available column data, and we're going to put our M quantity there and put M here. We will check syntax. Syntax is okay, which means our predefined copied grouping set is valid. And then we can just paste several of these to save us, again, some time. And we'll come in and do our grouping F quantity. It's a little bit more difficult to navigate with keyboard here, just constantly using those up and down arrows, although you can absolutely do it. Again, it can save you time, whatever works best for you at the time that you're using it. That say, it actually takes me longer to tab over there than it does to actually come over and just click and execute, usually, unless I misclick. We have a couple extra lines. Again, no biggie. I'll just delete those. And then F quantity, P quantity. And then we open, closed, shipped. Oh, apparently I missed total, or I deleted it, one of the two. It's okay. We still have our shortcut in our keyboard. Oh, nope, that's what I did. Okay. Open, closed, shipped, and total. We'll go ahead and check our syntax. Syntax is okay. Save. Now we'll go ahead and analyze and test, make sure everything that we're expecting is coming through. So we are getting our total values, quantity, everything here as expected. So we'll go back into our query builder and our calculated field because we didn't add our value as of yet. We want to add our value. It's going to be type int. And we will do another case statement. When, and this is going to be grouping, not equals 1, then we'll add our space, and then we want to copy this before we actually input any data into it. And we will look at our available table here. And here we want to have our M quantity, and our M quantity, we'll check our syntax real quick. Everything looks good. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. F quantity, P quantity, open quantity, closed quantity, shipped quantity, and total quantity. We'll check our syntax. Everything looks good. Save. And then we can go back to our analyze and test. Okay, so we now have a data separated out where we have the information, or much of the information we want, where we are down to a single column, and we can pivot on a single column. So we have our value and our date. We will come back to our query builder. We want to save our data before we create a new subquery, because otherwise, if we create one without doing display and everything else, it'll generate errors when we try to save. So new, and then go to top level, and we will call this table. It's going to be our top level query. Back to phase build, and that's our unpivot is our data source. Then we need to right click that and create a new pivot. We want to pivot on our label. We're going to come back to this later, but we're going to, there's only a pivot in list of constant list. We cannot dynamically create this list in Epicor. At this point, we need to actually define our aggregate formula. Our aggregate formula is going to be the sum of calculated value. Now, the data you need to be looking for, again, you need to already have it calculated. And this is going to just grab the singular row and display it in our updated field for all the tables. It is going to be basically the same expression for every row. So you already need to have that information set, displayed, or set up, ready to be displayed, and separated out from everything else. So we can save that. Specifically, I am going to want to open Excel now, because we need to create a long list of constants here. And to do that, we're going to use Excel, just because it's going to save us some time to do so. So in this column, we're going to go 1, and then we want to do -1, and we're going to expand this out to our row 53, which will give us down to -52. We'll put in our -52, because we're going to display all of those values. Now in here, we want to put in M, quantity, F, quantity, P, quantity, and then we're going to go open, quantity, closed, quantity, shipped, quantity, and total quantity. All right. Now in here, and I'm just going to copy and paste this, and then I'll kind of explain what it does. I have a formula here that I'm going to copy and drop into my D cell. And what it's going to do is it takes this list right here. It takes the length of that list -1 and gets me an integer value of that divided by the length of this list. So basically what it's doing there is grabbing the first value in this section. It's then going to concatenate that with the second value. This index is basically looking at the length of this list, doing a mod of the length of this row +1. And that's just basically matching each, for every one of these, it gets one of these added to it. So when we hit return, it's going to come up with 0M quantity. We're going to drag this down. So that is basically 378 different values that we would have basically had to type out. But by doing it this way, we are getting the program to do it, which is going to reduce our errors. We can now copy this list and go back to our business activity query in our specified list. Now here, we're going to paste upgrade, and that will actually delete this top row, which is empty. That way we don't have to go back and manually delete it. We also are going to want to add just this list as well. And to do that, we're going to paste insert, which is going to append the information to the bottom. Then we can then come to our display field. The values we want to display are company, plant, and to plant. We're going to add these. Since we are using the calculated label and calculated value fields to perform our pivot and our aggregate, those fields will not be displayed as part of our column data. We're going to go ahead and grab all of our data set here and copy it over. Again, it takes a moment because it's a very long list. Oh shoot, I wanted my inequality without week at the top of this list and all of that, and I forgot to do that. So let's go ahead and select our entire data set here, and we want to move that down below our other data. So that's going to be 8 times, and when we're done, it'll take it a moment because it's reorganizing the list. Or is it not going to actually do it for me at the moment? Well, it's thinking here. I do apologize for the delay. It didn't. Last time I did this, it did not take this amount of time to actually process the moving of everything. But now everything should be displayed as we want, with our summary data to the leftmost and all of our data otherwise at the bottom. Looks like we went once too many. So we're going to unhighlight that and move that back up 1 row. That is, I unselected that by holding the control key down. We will go ahead, come to our analyze. We are going to test. Now this is pretty much kind of what we expect at this point in time. No, we are not currently displaying our summary of information, nor do we have our breakout lines showing everything as broken out. But this is what we are expecting at this point in time because we haven't set up the calculations for performing those aggregate functions on our data set. But we do want to make sure to go ahead and save this because it is functioning as we intend at this point. We will go ahead and come back to our query builder, our phase build. I understand. We are going to go into unselect all of these group bys and go into the advanced clause editor. We're going to want to set up our advanced groups, which is going to give us our breakout data. Again, we will set ourselves up, specifically the aggregate fields we're wanting to look at, and parse our data on. Now, let's just go ahead and maximize that and give myself a little bit more room to work here. We're going to want company. I'm just, again, taking advantage of the fact that it does not remove my cursor to add a space and a comma. Plant, to plant, week. Now we want to add a end comma to this, and we'll copy that. And we're going to work with several pieces of data here. So first off, let's go ahead and get rid of the first set of data we want to do is company, plant, to plant, and week. The next set of data, we're going to go ahead and remove the to plant. The data after that will remove the plant and to plant, leaving just week. So week and company, we're going to delete this. Next set of data we want to work with is just going to be to plant. Next set of data we're going to want to work with will be just week. And then we're going to want a set of data that it basically does not group on. It basically takes everything and gives us our grand total. Now we will delete week here, week here, week here, and week here. Now that's kind of looking like what we would expect at this point in time. However, again, we did not create a new expression before we did this, so we're going to copy that, create that new expression, and paste. Now, when we click OK, that'll save. We can analyze, come back over and test. Incorrect syntax near query calculated. Generally, that since that was an advanced group by, yep, that's where my mistake was. I left it in comma. Anytime you go through and are testing, I always suggest hitting that test button often because it helps you identify causes for obscure and not super helpful error message with incorrect syntax near parenthesis. There are a lot of parentheses in my data set. We'll go ahead and test again. Now we are back to where we were, where we have our grand total line at the top and all of our data is split out into various sections. Again, having our every time we ship to a specific plant, every time we ship from a specific company and plant, and every time we ship to specifically ship from one plant to another. All this data is broken out and summarized for us in an easy to access format in 70 rows instead of trying to look at the 655 or 4,000 something rows that we had before. And that concludes my presentation.
All right, thanks, Kevin.
You haven't hit save on the BAQ. Do you recommend hitting save before you hit test or after you hit test?
After. And the reason why I recommend hitting it after you hit test is simply because at that point in time, you have a known good last step to go back to. So it's basically, I don't commit my changes until I know the changes that I made are what I want and what I expect at this stage.
Okay. So after you hit test and you make sure it worked right, then you hit save. Because if you hit save before and it doesn't work, you lose where you were.
I have found that has actually saved me very often.
And from Spencer, is there an easy way to turn those null values to zeros? And I was thinking you could do that with a coalesce, but I don't know. Is there another way that you would do that, Kevin?
Okay, so the reason that we're not turning null values to zero specifically is because our data is being cached. We only have data that's going to be in this particular table. We're only having data that's going to be from 0 to minus 53, just because of the way that we don't add ship dates that are in the future to the TF ship data. And we are using those null values specifically to actually generate this summary of information here, which is the M quantity of our grand totals.
Actually, Kevin, would you be able to put some of the equations into your PowerPoint? Not necessarily, if we can't send out the BAQ, just put a couple of the equations or sample equations into the PowerPoint. And when we put that up, that may be enough for people to take this and build from it.
First thing I can go ahead and do here is I'm going to bring my notes over here onto the screen. And for anybody who wants it at the moment, grab a screenshot. But if they're wanting to implement something immediately, this may actually help them get through the process a little bit faster.
Is there a way to make the pivot for clause dynamic? I've used pivot by week, but I need to delete each of the weeks in the past as they are no longer applicable.
Not to my knowledge. I have not found a way to actually do that because, again, it is the period of time from basically it's set in stone. Because it's a constant list, and Epicor BAQs do not allow you to put anything in there except for a constant list. But what you can do in that instance is, again, instead of doing explicit weeks, i.e. week of the year, in the instance where I have this data, it is actually showing a revolving window of 52 weeks. So you could easily go through and put a plus, plus so many weeks and minus so many weeks, and then have that all displayed across the across your dashboard. And once you do that, one of the things that you could do is if you would have to set out your maximum constraint, such as it being a maximum of 52 weeks and a minimum of, a maximum of plus 52 weeks to a minimum of minus 52 weeks. Then you could display that information actually on a dashboard where you can go ahead and easily filter out those columns that you're not wanting to see in that particular instance.
Could you quickly show how to put a comment on the calculated fields?
I got you. What you're looking for is doing a comment as to explaining what each of those is doing. Do I still have that open? I do. So if we want to add a comment to a calculated field, we can actually do so. I believe we can even do so inside the pivot. If we come down to our TF ship count, it would be a little bit better actually right in here because this is a little bit more complex. If we come into our calculated value, open our calculated field editor, we want to know what this is actually doing. So we're just going to add a new line, /* *, and then we can go build label from 0, build labels for column headers pivot table. And right in here, we're going to go ahead and add the comment of display the value of calculated field from TF ship count. Did that answer your question?
I think that did. That's what I was
Yep.
going to say for the comments as well. So right.
Another good thing to do when you're commenting and documenting what you're doing is in the phase build here, you can double click and add a comment here, such as tally shipments by week. And that will go ahead and add that comment right here and give you a bit more information as to what exactly you're doing with each individual subquery. With this one being relatively simple, being a subquery or a subquery for each level pretty much, and mostly tables. It's really simple. So a lot of comments aren't necessarily needed.
Wonderful. Some good ideas. All right. Any other questions? Go ahead,
Any
Calvin.
other
Sorry.
areas that you have used this pivoting?
We actually, so I built a dashboard that calculates out 52 weeks of demand. That's and that was for demonstration. That was for testing and development and a couple of different things. But this particular dashboard took all of the sales orders, transfer orders, and material job demand and built a list of demand over a 52-week period. It also calculated out the open PO lines over that same 52-week period. It then calculated the running inventory on hand for each of those parts over that 52-week period and highlighted specifically any areas where there were shortages, where POs did not meet the demand, and then it highlighted areas where those shortages were less than our lead time from the vendor for those parts.
Awesome. And I would think that this would also apply or work with sales orders to see a 52-week activity, or even look at financials and see historical activity from the TransGLC.
Yes, you can apply it in a lot of different areas. Again, that particular dashboard encompass sales orders, job demand, PO. Another thing you can actually do here too is at the end here, we can go to a calculated field editor, and we're going to call this line summary. We can go turn that into a bit, and we can go case when case go when is null then 1 else 0. We'll go ahead and copy this line, and we're going to go paste company plant to plant, and then we can go database fields, unpivot calculated company, unpivot to plant. Well, fix syntax, make sure everything's good, save, analyze, and test again. And we actually put that all the way at the back, but now there is a line that's going to tell us which of those are actually summary lines. And we're going to find that more useful if that is display field, if that is going to be at the top of our list. We're going to grab this line again, section. Come on, get back into this screen. And we'll move it all the way here. Move field down, analyze, and test. And it brings that visual indication up that each one of those is actually a summary line. And that's what I actually wanted to show and demonstrate as adding that summary.